Mere moments ago, President Trump announced that he's putting Vice President Mike Pence in charge of the administration's policy on the coronavirus, which is great news to anyone who has contracted the virus in Wuhan province, China, because it means it's more treatable than we all thought. You can apparently pray the disease away, or maybe enroll in one of those virus conversion camps.
Mike Pence says that it's not enough for the GOP to win the next election. They have to win the next generation. He then urged young people to follow his sweet square dance videos on TikTok.
I already do. Bernie Sanders has received tremendous criticism for comments he made supporting late Cuban dictator Fidel Castro. You know, it's not so much that Bernie loves Castro, it's that he hates having to campaign in Florida. When Bernie tries to defend the support of Castro, he's quick to point out the literacy program that Castro started in Cuba, which is not unprecedented when you consider that Idi Amin ran a tremendous after-school chess club, and you have not lived until you've heard Pol Pot's Pandora playlist.
At a royal engagement in Edinburgh, Scotland, Prince Harry asked to be introduced as just Harry. Well, actually, he asked to be introduced as H-Town, and they were like, yeah, you know what? We're going to call you Harry.
I would like to be called C-Note from here on in. It's hard to isolate which candidate had the strongest performance at last night's Democratic candidates debate in South Carolina, but it was clearly a huge night for someone who never expected to be mentioned during a national debate. The naked cowboy, who, as it turns out, is now polling higher than Bloomberg.
Hillary Clinton says that she will support whoever the Democratic nominee is, especially if that nominee is someone who needs a running mate and happens to have a problem with falling downstairs.
I knew you'd come around. And finally, during last night's debate, Joe Biden won after Tom Steyer, going so far as to give him the nickname Tommy Come Lately. I don't want to say that Biden's lost focus, but I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow his campaign released a new attack ad against Joe Biden. The Trump Report starts now.
I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Yes, welcome to the Trump Report, the not-so-super Tuesday edition, where we recap last night's debate in South Carolina. I'm Christian Bladt, joined by Tamra Brown.
Hello.
And at the intellectual end of the desk, which is the opposite of this end of the desk. Tamra, you're right in the middle. But, of course,
fair.
Mr. Scott Moore.
Hey, it's good to be
fair.
here. Good to be here, as always.
Yes.
The table is a spectrum,
Yeah.
just like everything else.
You've always got 270 electoral votes in my book, Scott. So there was a debate last night, and I think there's a few things you can compare it to. I think the first thing that I started seeing going around, that it was a lot like a Jerry Springer show in that it didn't have a lot of control. I thought it was a bit more like Maury. People were celebrating when they found out, whether or not they were the father. And there seemed to be a bit of crying. But Tamara, I'll ask you first. What did you think of last night's debate?
I think it is a waste of time. Where the needle is just really not moving, I don't think, for anybody. Are these debates making any bit of progress? I don't think that's happening.
Well, you didn't enjoy the last one. You said it made you very
uncomfortable. I didn't enjoy the last one. This one, too, there wasn't as many uncomfortable moments, but there were just enough to make me
cringe.
There was a couple cringeworthy moments.
There were a couple cringeworthy moments, which we'll go into. Scott, what did you think on the whole about last night's debate?
I enjoyed the debate in Vegas last week more than this one. I did think it was disjointed, and I also thought that the moderators were terrible, and there were a lot of issues just in the structure and the setup of that.
Yeah, you would think that we were talking before we started that you would think that the debate was run by the people who do the least watched network morning show and television, and there they were.
Yeah, they were.
Gayle King and Laura O'Donnell, who it was just more of like, no, you go ahead. What do you want to say?
Yeah.
What do you want to say? And the whole, everything was like, all right, we have a lot of stuff to talk about, but you get to respond to you, and then you get to respond to you. And Tom Steyer kept flapping his arms up and down. I don't quite know why he's there, especially because if you notice, they did turn his mic off at one point. They didn't turn off anybody else's.
I know, that was
I almost
odd.
think like when you speak to someone and you ask them a question, turn off everybody else's mic.
Right.
There was
a lot of over talking there last night, but I think going to what you were saying, Tamara, is they were so close to each other, these two debates. And I get, you want to be fair in the sense that Nevada was voting last week and this week is South Carolina. But they were less than a week apart, and now you're kind of like, okay, what are we really getting out of these debates? Because like anything else in life, some people are going to have better days than other people, and that's what we saw here. Like last week, some people were stronger in the debate than this week, you know? But at the end of the day, I think most of the people are pretty much aligned behind who they're going to be, and really it's going to come down to the voting now, because once the voting comes out and the delegates start going, and then you start to see who's going to have the momentum, or what George H.W. Bush used to say, the mo,
Right.
That's where you're going to start seeing some of these people dropping out or coalescing behind other candidates, but you're not going to really see any changes in the debates to really move the needle that much, as you were saying.
Yeah, there's a corner of last night's stage that everything is pinned on Super Tuesday, and if they don't finish strong, I'm talking about obviously Klobuchar and Steyer. I don't even know when the next debate is. I just hope it's not soon.
There were a lot this month.
March
Yeah.
15th.
Yeah, see, that's too soon.
But at least it's better than, it's not going to try to squeeze another debate in on Monday night,
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
Yeah.
we've had enough debates.
Yeah, I mean, I think that
It's getting to be like American Idol. There's just like 3 a week now.
no, it's American Idol.
and they can vote someone off.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
American Idol with 7 Sanjayas. So yeah, I think that it's I think it was a little bit hard to follow. And it was just a lot of noise. Everybody had to get in with
But
their
I get
one-liners.
I'll get why Gayle King was the moderators were, because I don't know. I guess this is probably insulting to South Carolina, but like I don't see them responding to a Lester Holt. Like they want the more folksy morning talk show. That's who that state.
Well, then they should have had Kelly and Ryan. I think they would have done a better job.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Or what's not Hoda and Kathy Lee anymore, but Hoda and Jenna Bush.
Jenna
Yes,
Bush.
there you
Oh,
go.
of course. She would have been.
yeah.
Yeah.
That would have been great. Look, they would
Yeah.
have had wine. You know,
Yeah.
maybe everybody would
Yeah.
have had wine. That could have
No,
been.
That could have been a
I
much
think Jenna Bush
better-
is pregnant,
All right,
so.
so maybe she just
which
drank
would have
some
went
grape
over
juice.
even
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, I thought that. I mean, it was infuriating because later better moderators came, especially Major Garrett, who's been around for a really long time, and he was given the chump's job of reading Twitter questions, and I'm like, so the guy with the most experience is the guy reading the Twitter questions. I know that Gayle King does their morning show, but I remember she was supposed to take over Oprah's empire at one point, and she had a syndicated show. This is like 20 years ago, and I think that she's like done that format for a long time. I don't know. I just I think and look, there have been some bad ones. I mean, we remember when we think far enough back, there was the one where microphones that were not supposed to be on were on. This was worse than that. That was like, it's a technical problem. This is just an inability to. And look, the moderators were not. Sorry, it's not the candidates were not particularly well behaved, or as Bloomberg called them, contestants. They were not very well behaved, and I think for a few of them, it's like, this is really my last chance, and that includes Joe Biden, who he's still pulling ahead in South Carolina by a lot less than he was, and I think if he doesn't win South Carolina, it's like, what are you still doing?
Yeah.
I was thinking, though, it was so odd that he went after Tom Steyer. Of like all the people on the stage, was like, do you just think you're going to get his like 0.08%
Because
of the
he
vote?
was polling third in South Carolina, right? I mean, he was
I guess that's
Biden's
true.
direct competition.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess Tommy come lately, it can buy you some votes. That was one of the things that people were saying about the crowd at this debate. They were never scolded for applauding, which you're usually taught. I mean, they're very specific in the presidential ones.
Yes.
That you can't do that.
You heard booing.
There was a lot of booing. It was it was directed at everybody, but it was also like, look, Elizabeth Warren really decided that last week she did so well. Got some great rib kicks in on Bloomberg, who did not handle it well. It was almost like this week they were like, yeah, okay, that's your thing. We got it. You don't like him, and he was better prepared than last week, but that's not really saying much.
I was
is
going
it?
to say there wasn't much for him to do but go.
Imagine
up
if
from
he'd
last
been
week.
worse than last week. And then somebody told
He'd
him, like,
still be in it, even if he
I mean,
was.
of course he's still in it.
Of course.
We were just talking about how much Bloomberg mailing we get, and every day I get something new from him.
Yeah.
I mean, if he wants to tape
Yeah.
$1 billion to it, I'll vote for him for everything.
Well,
I'll do write-in for everything.
I mentioned the commercial that's circulating. It looks like it's as if Obama is endorsing him because it takes a snippet, a video clip from like 2013 of Obama saying some nice things about him as if.
Well, and we talked about that last week, is that a lot of people actually read into that thinking that Obama had endorsed him. And that's where it was misleading. Because
we did talk about that.
Yeah, but it is fascinating because I kept thinking, do ads really work? Because in this day and age, people fast forward, people aren't really, but apparently they still work because he's doing decently in the polls. And someone was saying to me, why was Elizabeth Warren going after Bloomberg instead of Bernie? And I said, well, at this point, he's really a greater threat to her, staying in the race because he's polling decently well. In a lot of places, she's fallen to third or fourth, and he's leapfrogged her. So she's got to take out the person below her before she can go after the person above her.
And also, Elizabeth Warren's looking at that VP.
Sure.
Spot.
Well, and that's too.
She's not gonna really take down Bernie.
And Bernie's more in line with her than Bloomberg is for.
You probably shouldn't have called him a liar on national television, or I guess they both called each other liars, basically. But you could probably smooth that over. Just a couple comments from the chat. Mo Giant says that he's attended both Springer and Maury tapings in Stanford, and both those hosts have more control than last night's moderators. Rajiv Dixon, times like this, I miss Walter Cronkite, Gwen Ifill, Tim Russert, and Jim Lehrer.
Rajiv, how old are you, sir?
Well, I miss. Tim Russert was great. Them. And Jim Lehrer did most presidential debates. Not most presidential elections.
Cronkite?
Yeah, I don't remember him. I can honestly say I don't remember him doing any debates.
I don't either recently.
Yeah. I'm old. But I'm
old too, but I'm not Cronkite.
I'm not Cronkite old. Yeah, but look, it's a good point.
Gwen was always great too, and it's that is sad that because she was always on it and. It was always great watching her with the debates as well. So I do agree with that.
Let me.
What's
ahead.
Carson Daly doing? Is he moderating the next debate? Carson Daly. What's his name? Harvey on TMZ.
Oh, Harvey Levin?
Yeah. He's probably one of the moderators, I believe.
Yeah, but he's covering more important news than this.
That's true. He's busy.
Yeah, he's very busy.
He doesn't have time.
But
they tried. They tried to get him.
I wanted to take a moment and get some commentary from young Ryan in the booth, who I believe you said you watched the debate last night.
I watched them all, man.
I know why we do it, and there should be some kind of merit badge for actually watching this all the way to the end.
Yes.
What are your, just quickly, what were your takeaways from having watched last night's debate?
Yeah, I try not to share my opinion on a lot of this stuff too often, but I am pretty political and I do keep up. I watched this. I think the takeaway, are we asking who do I think won?
You can say that. Just some of your feelings about the different performances.
Yeah, I think obviously they didn't have any control. Once they lost control, the candidates were just rapidly. Everyone was guilty of that too. There was no one who was fine or walked away clean from that. I thought everyone was interrupting each other. Joe Biden sounded like Clint Eastwood in Gran Torino, just yelling at people to get off his lawn. I felt like every time Tom Steyer or Klobuchar spoke, it just felt like someone. I was like, okay, I'm counting the seconds for them to stop talking because this is just not interesting. I think this was a sign that Pete Buttigieg he's flailing. I think he's panicking. He doesn't know what to do. And he would interrupt Bernie like every time he spoke. And you could tell all the people who prepped him were like, just interrupt him. Just deny it all. And I think, and also Warren, she leaned back into criticizing Bloomberg because that worked so well for her last time that she just doubled down on it. And I think it had a similar effect. I think that there was no clear winner, but I think if the way technically, I would actually say Bernie or Warren won because they didn't lose. And I think that's a weird kind of logistic thing. But if you walk away not losing and you're already in the lead, that's a win in my book.
Yeah, nobody had a disastrous night except for CBS News. None of the candidates did.
Well, the Castro thing wasn't great for Bernie.
No, it's not great for him. I did want to talk a little bit more about the audience. There, were some thoughts circulating online that Bloomberg basically bought an audience, but my understanding is that they gave out, each candidate got a certain number of tickets to the debate, and I think you they were sort of free, but I believe you had to donate very handsomely.
I actually know some stuff about this.
All right, go ahead.
Because I was really curious about that.
I was listening to a conversation about it earlier, but go ahead.
You're right. Each candidate does get an X amount number of tickets for people who are in their camp. However, if you just wanted to buy a ticket to go, it's anywhere between $1,500 and $3,200 to
Which
go
is
in.
insane, by the way, because I went to a debate in 2008. It was Obama, John Edwards, and Hillary, and it was free. What are they charging for?
Yeah, I know. Like,
what are they charging for? Like, it's not like Ticketmaster has a hand in these debates. Like,
I mean,
what is that fee going towards?
Well, is there? I don't know. Is there a meet and greet? Do you get to get into the merch table first, like a concert?
Why would you want to even spend that kind of money when you could just watch on TV and fast forward?
Do you get like an Oscar goodie bag with like Fenty products in it?
And then I guess so you could buy it for that amount, but also there are the tickets that were given away to the candidates. But then you also have to wonder, it was like, if I work for Mike Bloomberg, I'd be like, you have unlimited funds.
Right.
You walk up and down that line, buy those tickets from everybody, and like, how much did you pay for it? $500. Okay. Would you like $1,000 right now to go watch it at home? I'll do that. And look, here's a gift card to Chili's. You can go have dinner too. So, I mean, I think that's not impossible, but I also think it's not like, look, the crowd was surprisingly pro Bloomberg, but it was also anti a lot of other people. I don't think it was just, it was, again, this raucous crowd that we shouldn't have had.
Well, can I throw one thing out there?
Go ahead.
I'll stop interrupting. I promise.
No, it's fine.
I mean, even if, whether he bought tickets for people or not, the idea that you can afford to go to something like that for $1,500 or $3,200 means Bloomberg's ideals are going to be benefiting you if you can afford to even do something like that. So whether or not he paid for it or not, it's people who would benefit from him being president that could even afford to do something like that.
Well, that's true. And in that case, like if that many people were supporting Bernie in the audience and they were of a higher class of people, then, I mean, that's even better for Bernie.
Yeah. So it's, certainly it's interesting, but to Scott's point, Bernie doesn't apologize, and he should really think long and hard about either walking back or outright apologizing for Castro.
Disagree.
Does he want any votes in Florida? Because you're not going to get a lot of them. You're certainly not going to win it. You're basically punting Florida by coming out in favor of. And
I disagree on that.
Okay, but
this
this
talk
isn't
about that though.
Okay, but I mean, this is someone who is responsible for the murder of thousands of people. This is not. This isn't like. This isn't like coming out in favor of Kanye. You're like, he's a bit of a dick, but all right, sure. It seems like it's not something that is gonna go away. And by the way, I ruffled some feathers in the comments for last week's episode. This feeds right into the narrative. The guy who honeymoons in the Soviet Union and also loves Fidel Castro. I mean, does anybody even need to write the opposition research on Bernie Sanders as a communist? Because look who he's coming out in favor of. I know says he doesn't like Putin, but he probably loved Gorbachev. I mean, he must have been happy to go there and visit him. Or I don't know if that was Khrushchev. I don't know quite the timeline from when he and Jane got married, but that's not the point. I think that I think it's assuming that people are more forgiving of I made a joke about it, but this idea that Castro had a literacy program, and when people booed him in the debate, it's like, oh really, you guys don't like literacy? No, we hate that he's a goddamn murderer. That's what we don't like. Anyway, Scott, you disagree, and I think Tamra disagrees too. But Scott, I'll let you. Well, you tell me why you disagree.
Well, I had a little bit of a Twitter back and forth with some people.
With Castro, wow,
who's dead, and
he's got great Wi-Fi. Julian Castro got him. He's like, but so Bernie says he likes me. What's wrong with that?
But growing up in Florida, I know he was.
It'd be hilarious if it was all just a misunderstanding which Castro.
I met Julian Castro.
Yeah, exactly. Well, two things. I think one is Trump has proven that you can basically say and do whatever you want, and you don't need to apologize.
Okay, that's absolutely true. By the way, yep.
Bernie is kind of taking that playbook as being the far left version of Trump.
Yeah.
I think it plays right into that. So why does he apologize? He tried to clarify. I agree. He didn't do a good job clarifying what he was saying yesterday. But two, I've had this discussion with people in Florida. It's not going to change much because Castro as the boogeyman is not the same as it was back in the 80s, back in the 90s. He has passed away. His brother's not even in power anymore. Younger Cubans are more democratic leaning to begin with, have never visited the island. It's mainly their grandparents and people now that are dying off. And the type of people that are hardcore against Castro and that regime are not the same as in numbers as they were. And, I had some other people that brought up, oh, there's Venezuelans now that are in Florida, and they're going to be upset about that.
I'm sure he likes Hugo Chavez, too. I know he's not around anymore, but I'm sure that, that was on his, somebody whose reading list he was on.
But yeah, but my point is the fact that the numbers of the fervent anti-Castro GOP are just not there as they were 20 years ago. And now you're having the next generation of Cubans and Cuban Americans that are more democratic leaning. They're not quite as in that hard opposition, and things like this are not going to matter. And Florida's going to be close no matter what. So it's yes, you could say this. I had a lot of people like Rick Wilson, for instance, was like, oh, Florida's gone. I'm like, no, not at all, because the point is that Florida is very, very close, and between now and then, who knows what Trump could say, what could happen, like what happened in 2012 with Superstorm Sandy. If a major hurricane comes in the week before and Trump does a great job of helping with the recovery, then you could see, okay, he gets the bounce and he gets the state, or a lot of areas in the state can't vote anymore, or vice versa. He says something really bad and
snide remark against NASCAR and forget it.
I mean, it's just saying that Florida's gone because of that is a little bit simplifying the situation, and I do not agree with what Bernie said, but for it to actually take Florida out of contention, I do not think that that's going to be an issue, because Florida's going to be close no matter what happens, and it has been close since 92.
Right.
And I just do not see that a comment like this is going to have the same weight that it would have had 20 years ago.
Well, I think far more problematic is the fact that Bernie said he didn't like Pitbull. What do you think about that, Tamra? No, what are your thoughts on his comments about Castro and why you think they're not a big deal?
Well, I just what Scott was saying about how Trump is the proof that people want to hear a brash, non-apologetic opinion. And so that I think that's what the Democratic candidate, whoever it may be, that is what they need to aim for, the non-apologetic. It would be nice if we had a society where, like Klobuchar said last week, where you can apologize for your mistakes, but I don't think that's going to fly anymore in this day and age. Now, for what Bernie said, I was kind of confused on the context of when he said were they asking him about like a quote from something he had said before? When did he praise Castro for the literacy program?
Oh, this was on a 60 Minutes interview.
On Sunday.
Yeah, that was very recent.
And he said, did he use it as like a, was it just like, I mean, in what context did he say that?
I will have to say that it actually doesn't matter. It does not matter what the context is.
I didn't know if it was like an example of like, hey, even the worst people, there's something, Mussolini made the trains run on time. I didn't know if he was saying something like that.
Well, he basically sort of was, to the degree of like, taking out that no government is perfect in things, and he was not a perfect, but look at some of the good things that they did, like with not Medicare, but health insurance for everyone and 100% literacy and things like that for the Cuban people. And the way he said it made it seem like, and then people were bringing up, oh, well, Hitler got the Autobahns and, going in Germany. It's like comparing some of the good things that he was trying to say, but he just kept digging himself deeper, was that no government's perfect in a sense, and that some governments do provide really great things for their people, and that was what he was saying. But it doesn't balance out to what the regime has done in general. And I've been to Cuba a couple of times now too, so I can I see I know what he was trying to say, but it doesn't work. It's like you can't say, oh yeah, like the same thing with Hitler. You can't say, well, he did a great job with creating the Autobahn.
Yeah.
And so of course there's never going to be perfect government or perfect things, but when you see that you have a murderous and a government that squashes human rights and things like that. And you can't really then, on the other hand, be like, well, they have 100% literacy and look, they have free health insurance, but yet none of the doctors are able to really stay there. Or they have to have 3 jobs. Just
Also,
to
the literacy program was like an indoctrinating. Like it wasn't.
Yeah, that's sort of the
Of course,
the
it's
part
like yes.
that is lost in a lot of
So you can read
this.
the La Grandma every day, and
Yeah.
it was the communist paper that would basically spread the propaganda every day in Cuba.
One of the things that Elizabeth Warren said, there were a lot of things she said that got some boos, but one of the things that she said that I found surprising, I think she legitimately believes that this is a progressive country. And I think if this were a progressive country, and again, razor thin margins, all that, but I don't think you ever would have had Donald Trump as president if this really was a progressive. I think it's a lot more centrist than the people on that stage want it to be. And I think that if the centrists were the strong, charismatic types on that stage, they probably would be in the lead. But it was all, it just... once Biden started debating, you saw the numbers were slipping pretty fast, slipping like the dentures that he had in. I wish I'd had that first.
I think we have I think everybody's definition of what is progressive and what is centrist is pretty skewed. It's all over the place right now. I mean, you could make the argument, somebody who claims to be centrist, you could make the argument that they probably are progressive depending on whatever their social, maybe fiscally they're a little bit more centrist, but like I believe like even people consider themselves conservative Republicans usually are now in favor of gay marriage and things like that are like social issues. And I don't know, I saw that somewhere.
No, I mean, I think you'll still have people that are just opposed because they strongly, and then you have people who are in favor, and then you also have people that are just like, let other people do what they want to do.
And then you could make the argument that the people who are called progressive and far left, like in the grand scheme of things, it's really not that far left. I don't know. I just feel like the perception of what is left, right, and center is no longer.
Well, and it's
just a label. It doesn't even.
No, it's
an
true.
accurate representation.
It's shifted over time, and the label of like being a socialist is now this negative thing, and obviously, like we were saying, that's going to be the easiest thing to slap on Bernie because he calls himself that, and it has shifted over time too. So some people that might say, "Oh, I'm a progressive" or "I'm this," would be very different than what it was at 20 years ago. When you start to see this kind of shift that's more extreme left and more extreme right, and the people in the middle. And I think a lot of people feel that way. They don't really have a home anymore because now the Republicans have gone so far right, and Democrats, in their opinion, have gone so far left. And what used to be in the middle ground, where we talked about this before, Democrats and Republicans were basically the same on a lot of the general issues in the past, and that's why there was an ability to kind of work across the aisle. And then you see the way presidents were and speakers of the House and how they interacted. But you could also see now, like, a lot of those presidents that were Republican would be Democrat today, and vice versa. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Gerald Ford and Richard Nixon would pretty much be Democrats in today's world because of the fact that they kind of were the Rockefeller Republicans in the Northeast and everything were essentially very liberal Democrats today. So it's kind of fascinating to see how even just over time, and people could still be in the same kind of thing, but now their party has left them because of they've kind of stayed the same, but everyone's kind of moved in more extreme directions, and that's what we're seeing with Bernie and Donald Trump being ahead in their parties. Is they were like fringe candidates in the past that are now becoming the mainstream candidates. So it's very interesting.
And then even how just the broad idea that human right to affordable health care, that's extremely left. Like, really? Come on. That's
I think it's the notion, as we've talked about so many times on this show, it's how you think you're going to pay for it, and he gets pretty angry when you say that it's going to be whatever it is 30 trillion. I don't even know. It's over 10 years.
Yeah.
Like, it's still a lot of money.
Yeah,
that's
45 trillion. It changes all the time.
Yeah. So whatever it is, and I think that people on that stage at least are like, yeah, we think this is a good idea, but I don't know. I mean, Bloomberg could pay for it. Bloomberg and Tom Steyer could pay for it, I think. Actually, no, they couldn't because they're billionaires and not trillionaires.
Now.
So they could get you started.
Pay for a big chunk of it.
They pay for a lot. Yeah.
See if they can rope, what's his name, Gates into it.
And Bezos, you know, or Bezos' wife, who has half of his money, but still got plenty. Yeah, that's
Warren,
true. They can get it all together. Yeah,
a couple of those.
But I do think it's interesting that, and I think we talked about this last week, that it's only Mayor Pete is the only person on that stage who is neither a millionaire nor a billionaire, but everyone on the stage. So like the candidates of the people are all millionaires, and that it's like even Bernie Sanders, with the I mean, obviously he's been at it a long time, so you hope he made some money, but it's I don't know. I think that we talked a lot about this last week, so we don't need to circle back to it, but it is interesting, and I think that it's very difficult to see your middle of the road Americans thinking like, I think I have too much money. I think I want my small business to be taxed out of existence. I think I'm going to vote for Bernie Sanders. And it doesn't even matter if that's accurate information. It's just the feeling that people get. And
the ones that are terrified of Bernie are thinking that they're the ones that are going to be responsible for supporting a lower. I got into a Facebook argument with somebody after
That's a huge mistake,
after
by the way.
after USC announced that families making under $80,000 will have free tuition, and this person was arguing that so if you make $85,000, you're going to have to provide the tuition.
Yeah, I think that's if you have $85,000, I think you can. I mean, it's a pretty expensive school. My wife went there, but
well, whatever. We won't get into USC, but like still. They have they're notorious for their like wealthy student body, and so I don't think it's the person that's just over that $80,000 cusp that their tuition is going to go. I mean, their tuition may go up a couple thousand a year for sure, but it's not going to.
Yeah.
My point is the person that is upper middle class worried that they're the ones that it's going to be hard hit by Bernie. It's like, no, don't blame the people that can't afford things. Blame the people that are multi-billionaires who are not paying their fair share. That's who you need to be yelling at.
And that's what we said last week. That's what I said last week anyway, is that you should really tax Jeff Bezos at a very high rate, but he should still be allowed to be a billionaire. I mean, Mike Bloomberg didn't inherit his money, tax him. That's fine. That's not the problem. But that's not, I think, the way that people see it. Before we run out of time, I did want to talk about one other thing that Elizabeth Warren mentioned, which was how important it is to repeal the filibuster. And maybe I'm mistaken on this. I think that's a really bad idea. I think you should keep the filibuster because if you don't have the filibuster, there were 2 abortion bills today, right? That was today in the Senate, or it was this week.
Yeah, this week.
That I think without a filibuster, the Republicans would have been able to vote on them, and then they probably could have gone to the Supreme Court. Now, maybe that I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it the way she does. So, 2-part question for you, Scott. Why do you think Elizabeth Warren, and she's not the only one who said this, why do you think she wants to get rid of the filibuster, and why do you agree or disagree?
Well, I think it comes down to we've already seen an erosion of the Senate norms with Mitch McConnell. As we've talked about in the past, it did start with Harry Reid. But then Mitch McConnell took it a whole other level, and that goes into the nuclear option when it came to judges, which is now why so many judges are getting approved because it's just a simple majority, and then they did it with the Supreme Court. So So I do I understand where she's coming from, because to be able to move certain matters through that just will never get through because of the filibuster. But I think it sets a dangerous precedent of things that we've already had the erosion, which goes back to Mitch McConnell. And I think if you get rid of that filibuster, you get rid of any ability for the minor party to be able to have any say. They'll at this point then be completely shut out of the conversation if that's the case. And I think that's one of the last vestiges that did have the Senate be that deliberative body that took it to a different level than the House. So I understand where she's coming from, but it just concerns me that once it's gone, and then when the same thing happens, because it's going to happen no matter what, the Democrats will have a majority again, and it cycles through. It's just going to be a very dangerous precedent for future now when you have that in general, because that's the last kind of vestige to be able. But it does take away from being able to move bills forward, and it can be cumbersome, and it is a little ridiculous, like when you had Ted Cruz reading Green Eggs and Ham. It becomes a thing that's just a distraction and can be used improperly. But I think if there could be some changes made to it that everyone could agree on its purpose and how it's implemented and how it's done, it's something that's worth saving, because then you have nothing. So.
Before we run out of time, I wanted to see what each of you think about what might happen this weekend in South Carolina. And by the way, the next time you see us, unless something changes, it will be Tuesday night, I believe at 9 p.m. Pacific time. And yes, I know that's midnight Eastern. But we do need some super results from these Super Tuesday states, so we want to be able to comment on that. So just sort of some general thoughts and feelings. You don't have to, if you want to pick a winner and who will be doing well by the next time we have the show on Super Tuesday, that's fine. But just sort of general expectations for South Carolina on Saturday and looking ahead towards Tuesday. Tamra, I'll ask you first.
Oh, gosh. I was hoping you'd go with Scott first. I don't know. I don't think Bernie has been leading, but I don't think he's going to win South Carolina. Who is in first for polling right now?
It's still Biden, but not by as much. Yeah. Here's my hot take. Beto's getting back in, and he is going to take everything by storm. I think, look, I wouldn't be shocked if Biden didn't win South Carolina at this point, just because of, the way he was flailing his arms on the stage is kind of the way his campaign's been going in 2019 was great for his campaign. 2020 has not been kind to his campaign.
Well, 2019 was good because he had less debates and he could kind of just glide on being the although in 2019 his teeth did almost fall out on national television, so I guess it wasn't perfect. But he was still holding those numbers because nobody was really paying attention.
You're the only one that bothered.
No, I love it. No, it doesn't bother me at all. It's my favorite thing that's happened in the last few years.
Nobody was really paying attention. It wasn't until the end of the year that people were starting to pay attention. So that's why he was just the presumptive front runner forever. Nothing was denting his lead, and then it started to be like, oh, wait a minute, okay. I still think he's going to win on Saturday. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't, but I think because of his history with South Carolina and the fact that he's been involved for so many years, that he has a lot of loyal voters that are still going to vote for him, and he's still going to eke out a win. What I'll be more curious to see is who falls in second, third. Is it going to be Bernie, and then who's going to be third? Like, who's going to be down the line? And then from there on Super Tuesday, are we going to see some candidates now drop out that are just not going to do well?
I think if Bernie can pull out a second, that's a pretty good win for Bernie for South Carolina.
Yeah, I think
absolutely. From where he was earlier.
Honestly, third's going to be okay. When if he's any lower than that, then it's like, oh, okay. But then that'll depend. Like, does Mayor Pete suddenly do well there? But you were saying that it was Steyer who was polling very well.
He was right below. He was
like Bernie.
Yeah. So he's been spending a lot of money there.
What if he spends $1 billion because it's Wednesday? He could spend another $1 billion between now and then. Like, what if he just literally buys votes? Like, not everybody will do it, but you're just like, here, vote for me, vote for me, vote for me. I mean, give some of those Yang $1,000 away. I think that Biden will have a good day on Saturday, but I don't think he's going to have a good day on Tuesday.
I don't either.
I think that he might do okay. Like he'll get people to vote for him, but I think that I can't imagine anybody other than Bernie having a good day on Tuesday.
Yeah, and then my other thing I'll be curious is how well does he do, especially out here in California on Tuesday, and that's what I'm going to be watching for. Is he going to be able to get enough of a threshold to keep a lot of the candidates below 15%? Because if he does that, then he gets a good haul of delegates. Yeah. But if you can get some other candidates that can squeak in with that 15% threshold, then they can take quite a bit of the delegates. Yeah. So that's what I'm really going to watch for, because it seems like he's steadily in the lead here in California. But how strong is that turnout going to be, and how much is he going to win by, and how are the other candidates going to be kept down as far as that? Because once he gets those delegates, that'll really give him a good, solid lead.
Well, when you're looking at the California results and you see one write-in vote for Bill de Blasio, just know that was me. Anyway, it'll be fascinating to see. It'll be interesting to see Saturday. But what'll really be interesting is when we're back to talk on Super Tuesday.
Because that's like nationwide, so that will be a really like nationwide primary to really see where the country is at across coast to coast.
And then you can basically take a nap till the conventions. No, you have to stay with us. So we'll be back Tuesday night. But until then, Scott Moore, where do people find you?
You can find me on Twitter, having Twitter fights at sman80.
And Tamra Brown, where do people find you?
I guess Twitter, @HeyTamra_.
Yeah, I guess so. Why not? You can find me on Twitter and Instagram @ChristianDMZ. And if you want to see me talking about things that really matter, make sure to tune in to AfterBuzz TV tomorrow night at 9 Pacific for the Star Trek Picard After Show. That's all the time we have right now, but we will see you Tuesday night. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.